Hello, everybody, and welcome to this global GEG session that will be an introduction to Nearpod, or essentially kind of a 101 Nearpod session. You should see a link in the chat, and you should also see it on your screen now, that you can go to nearpod.com and use the code NDXWV, and that will get you into the Nearpod, and I'll be jumping over there in just a few seconds. But I am Patrick Hausman. You can find me on Twitter at phasedu, and email is phasedu@gmail.com. You'll see that I do have a range of badges on the screen. I am an ASCD Emerging Leader from the class of 2019, Google Certified Trainer and Innovator, and more pointedly for this session, I am also a Nearpod Certified Pioneer, as well as a Nearpod Certified Educator. So very much hoping that you guys enjoy the session. And if you are new to Nearpod, as this session is designed for you, hopefully you get everything you need to jump in and get started with Nearpod. So we'll go ahead and jump over to the Nearpod itself. And this Nearpod is distinctly going to be a teacher-paced Nearpod. So as you jump in, you won't be able to advance until I move the screens. There is a student-paced option as well, and we'll get into showing both of those here at some point. The student-paced, of course, would allow people to log in, or your students to log in and advance the slides when they're ready to. And of course, that is really nice for a flipped classroom type scenario, review, or of course, in a lot of our classrooms right now, we have students working from home remotely or virtually, and that student-paced link can help them to be able to work from home without the teacher needing to advance the slides. As you see on your screen, and we'll probably hit this again later on, but as you get to starting a Nearpod, you have various options to share it out. I've done the link option here so that we can easily put it into the chat, as well as being able to launch it into Google Classroom, which you'll see right here. That is the option a lot of our teachers use, as we are a Google district, so that it is very easy to share these out really any way that you want to. So I'll go ahead and close that. And you'll see one of the first things that you should have had when you got into the Nearpod is this nice meme scale waiting for you. So you can go ahead and use the chat to enter the number that corresponds to how you're feeling this evening. It is 7 p.m. Eastern time where I am. I realize it could be different in the time zone you are, but go ahead, feel free to use that chat to type in the number that you feel. I would say I am getting a little tired, but I'm not quite down to the number 5. I would say I'm somewhere in between maybe the 2 and the 5. I am happy, but I'm also starting to wind down as the day comes down. We'll go ahead and give it just a few seconds here, and I'll point out a couple things on the screen before we keep going. One thing is, on the teacher side, you'll notice up here in the top left-hand corner, that code always stays there for you. So as you're presenting, if you had this projected up in front of the students, if somebody pops in a few seconds late, they're always going to be able to grab that code and jump right in to where you are. They won't start from the beginning. They'll start from wherever the teacher's screen is. And you'll also notice up here in the top right, there is a option that says switch to student view. So at any point on the teacher side, you would be able to click that, flip the view so the students can actually see up on the screen projected exactly what they would see on their device. And that helps especially for a 101 or new people to Nearpod. It allows that teacher to show them exactly where things are, where the tools are, so that they can jump in and make things happen. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and keep rolling on through. I see at least a number 6 in the chat. So I'd say that is definitely a happy number. So I'm glad to see the positive side. Another thing that we'll point out right before I keep going on in slides is down here in the bottom right on the student side, you are able to hide the student names, which is a really good thing, especially if you are projecting that up in front of a class. As students do things like quizzes and different things that may obviously have some personal identifiable information, you may want to hide those student names so that it doesn't show for everybody. And we already did the intro slide, so we'll go ahead and jump past that. If you are new to Nearpod, one of the biggest and nicest things on the student side is on the right-hand side of your screen, you should see a little notes tab. And what you can do with that notes tab is pop that open, tell it that you want to save it to Google Drive, and that is going to give you and your students, when they click that, a full copy of the Nearpod with any notes that you take as we go through. Some of the things we'll touch on, and I do notice, and you probably saw too, there's a pretty large amount of slides, but we'll roll through things fairly quickly. And some of the things I will kind of skip through quickly because I'll demo them for you as well. But we want to make sure that you get to experience Nearpod in this session, have you actually log into an account, maybe find and launch a Nearpod. That may happen after the session as you play with things, and also review kind of how student learning could happen during a lesson, which you're experiencing now if you're logged into the Nearpod, and also checking those reports after a session. So before we go any further, we're going to have a collaborate board. This is a way that you can kind of poll students or have them do kind of a brain dump or just get a lot of brainstorming ideas out there. On the teacher side, you can go ahead and tell whether or not this is going to be moderated. And you can see here I have a checkbox where I can say whether or not this is going to apply to the entire session. I'm going to go ahead and say yes. And it says, would I like to approve comments? For this instance, I'm going to say no so that you guys can freely post whatever you would like here. But the question or prompt for this one is, what do you already know about Nearpod? And also, what do you want to know? So I'll go ahead and give you a few seconds here. And if you're not in the Nearpod yet, check up in the chat and you should see the link to go ahead and jump in here at any time. And as a reminder, the code is also up here in the top left. You can either click the link in the chat or go to nearpod.com and go ahead and type in the code you see. You can click in the box and type text. You can also use an image if you like. And I see we got at least one that has come in so far. And you can know how to search for activities and best practices for creating activities effectively, okay? We'll go ahead and leave this up here for a few more seconds and then we'll keep rolling through. And what I will also do is make sure that we get a student paste code into this too so that you guys will have access to this slide deck afterwards as well. How do I convince teachers to learn a new program? I love the program, but it's a big ask. I agree. It is a big ask for teachers to learn something new. One of the big selling points for me in my district with Nearpod was the ability to have what is now somewhere over 8,000 pre-made lessons and teachers being able to find some things that they can just tweak and run with versus creating from scratch definitely helped our teachers to jump on board. So I'll go ahead and keep going, but this gives you an idea of how a collaborate could happen and also that you can do images. And absolutely, the ability to have those PhET simulations in Nearpod is an awesome feature. So another question we had come in, do teachers do they essentially need to make one presentation for students to interact with and one to keep for reference? Not necessarily. You can make more than one if you want, but you can also just launch it in different ways. So you could have one that you keep as a student paste or one that doesn't get touched. You could launch one as a teacher paste, but you can change that code after the fact and post it into your Google Classroom or whatever LMS so that students have that as a reference point. But you wouldn't necessarily have to make two. We'll go ahead and keep rolling through. And I'm going to go ahead and say that you can play this video on your device if you want, but since this whole session is about how to use Nearpod and an intro to Nearpod, I'm going to go ahead and skip the video for now, but do know it is very easy to embed a YouTube video or another video from a different source into Nearpod and be able to play it either as the teacher for everybody to watch as you play it, or as I click the option, give people the ability to click on the play button and play it on their own devices. One of the very nice things about Nearpod in that sense is, again, it doesn't take you out anywhere. It kills the ads. For instance, this is a YouTube video, so you're not going to see those ads on the side. You won't see them underneath. Students, in this case, would just be able to play the video and watch it on their own. But again, since we're going to go through everything, I'm going to go ahead and go past the video. I apologize to anybody if you're watching it currently, but very quickly in a nutshell, Nearpod is an engagement platform that allows you to embed a ton of different assessment pieces and really engagement pieces into a lesson that is essentially slide based, but you'll see soon there's a lot of other things you can embed to really just make that content more engaging and give you really meaningful data on the flip side. So we'll go ahead and go on to the next slide, but we're going to learn throughout this session how you could present a Nearpod, how you package those lessons, and some ways that you can personalize. You can use Nearpod as part of whole group instruction, and that's essentially what we're doing right now, where the teacher is leading the discussion, and we will have strategically placed some formative assessment pieces, and it's really meant to kind of be a front of the classroom, or in this sense, me in front of the computer directing the lesson as we go through. And we'll go ahead and jump to a question on your side. And again, what you would see on this side is going to be if the same thing as if I click this change to student view. I should then in a second here, if my internet plays nice for me, I should see the quiz that you guys have on your screen that you should be able to answer now. But again, I could switch over to that so I could show exactly what the students would see. And in this case, it's an open-ended question that says, think about kind of your classroom and how you might be able to change things up. And I'll read that more here, but I want to point out the message here that says, is Nearpod allowed to use your microphone? Because you'll notice at the bottom, this question type also allows students to record an audio answer, which is a huge deal, especially for some of our English language learners, some of our young students that might struggle with typing, some of our students with disabilities. They can hit that record their answer to that question you see at the top instead of having to type it letter by letter. You'll also notice Immersive Reader is built in, which is going to give those students another item that can help them read that prompt. If I just click it, you'll notice I get a play button, and that's going to allow it to be read to the students. If I click on the text preferences, I can change the size, I can increase spacing and font. I have grammar options I can turn on and off to show the different parts. And I also have a reading preference where I can turn on different line focus, a picture dictionary, as well as translate into different languages. So you have a ton of different options there. I'll go ahead and switch back to the student view. If you haven't already, please go ahead and submit the answer. You can see some of them have answered, some have not. I could always go ahead and click to show student names if I wanted to. And I can also click this share button, which would allow me to post that answer out or share that answer out to everybody that's in my class. We'll go ahead and keep going on. Another way that you could do more active learning with Nearpod is teacher facilitated instruction. And this would be much more of a teacher being the facilitator versus the sage on the stage or the one clicking the button to advance every slide. It's more providing resources kind of in that moment for review. Again, maybe that flipped classroom style. and the students are interacting with the content, the teacher, and each other versus just the teacher kind of giving everything out to the students. So on this next screen, we're going to go ahead and explore a classroom that is from way back. You want to go ahead and pan around the room. If you're on a touchscreen, you can just click and move around. If you're on a laptop, you can click the screen and drag it. Go ahead and you can look up, you can look down, you can look all around the room. You are going to have a question that comes right after this slide. But this is an example of another engagement element that you can add in with Nearpod, which is the virtual reality or the VR component, which is really nice to obviously be able to go around the world in a time where we really can't travel and see it. But also, even pre-COVID, it was a really nice thing to be able to have my students from a really rural area experience a lot of the things from around the world. But I'll go ahead and give you a few more seconds here to check out this scene, check out what the seating looks like. Where do you think the teacher would be in this scenario? And please feel free to type anything in the chat about what you see. Is it easy to use this VR? What do you think of the quality? How do you think you could use a VR type scenario with students? Obviously, I already told you this one is going to be followed by a question, but what else do you think your students could use it for? What could you use it for? We'll go ahead and jump to the question. So you should see a question on your screen right now that is, what are some things you noticed about the difference between classrooms then and now? And I would stretch this to say back then and also probably pre-COVID, as far as back when we could do things like flexible seating and we could have things like couches and different things in our rooms. But you'll notice on the multiple choice, as we have some answers come in, they will populate. And since this one was an option where you could have more than one answer, you'll see that on some of the answers, we'll have more than one come in. And then you'll also notice down this left-hand side, you'll actually get a pie chart that starts to populate with the different choices that have happened. And then you'll get an idea of what that percentage is right underneath there. And I could share this out to everybody. And as before, I could also unhide those names. And you can see these are the answer choices from the question. So as the teacher, I could flip to that student view, but I can also get an idea of what people are answering from this side. And I could also zoom out a bit more, and that would allow me to see a little bit more of those coming in. You could also have set an only correct answer using the quiz option versus a poll question as well. So in essence, another piece of Nearpod, and this is that part that I would say really helped a lot of our teachers get on board, is there's now upwards of 8,500 different standards aligned lessons within Nearpod. You can also fairly easily create your own from scratch. And if you have the gold level account, you can also use the Google Slides add-on. The free version, unfortunately, doesn't come with the add-on anymore. But if you have that one step up upgrade, you can use that add-on in Slides to create. And also, you can connect multiple resources and tools all into one place and really make Nearpod nearly a one-stop shop for a lot of your lessons. And to give you just a little peek into one of those lessons, there is an add-on component for social and emotional learning within Nearpod. So these are a few slides on a thinking flexibly, pardon me, and a growth mindset lesson. A lot of them are going to start out with an essential question, such as this one of why is how you learn just as important as what you learn? You'll then come in and you can customize all of these different slides. So if you wanted your essential question, or as you see here, your learning objective to be different, you can change all of those pieces. And you can see it's going to tell them in this lesson, for instance, that there's an interactive video that's coming up next. And because this is more of a training one, we have that video coming, but there's also a little sample slide here that tells you kind of what that interactive video is like. You will have the video, but you'll also be able to embed multiple choice and open-ended questions. I believe there is somewhere over 1,000 videos in the system pre-made right now. but you can also bring in your own videos as well as videos from YouTube that you can add assessments to. And any assessment you find in Nearpod, you can also customize those questions so you don't necessarily have to use what's there. By all means, you can, but you can customize any of those questions and add more as well. You can also either let students go through on their own, or you can project it up in front of the room so that everybody kind of follows through together. And that's the option here where you can say, I'm going to go ahead and play it, or I can have students play it. I'm going to go ahead and choose the option to let you play it if you wish. And you'll notice here it says students will be able to move through the pace at their own. And I'll go ahead and just click on one of these blue dots so that you can see on the teacher side, as students get to that point in the video, they'll be presented with this question, and I will see as those students answer what they answer. And because this one has a right or wrong answer, I would be able to tell on the fly as they're watching it whether or not they got that answer correct or not. And I'll go ahead and pause here for a few seconds just in case you want to kind of scrub the video to one of those points and see what that looks like. But you'll also see a couple of things on the teacher side. Number one, I can click through to any of these questions and see. This is an example of what an open-ended question would look like. And you can see students haven't gotten to answering that one quite yet. But I can jump back and forth too. You can see we have at least one person that has answered the multiple choice question. As of right now, we have 100% as far as getting that one correct. And you can see I have a few more options down here at the bottom, including adjusting the time, going into settings. But that gives you an idea of how that open-ended question and that multiple choice would work in the interactive video. And then you would also have that data captured in your Nearpod report on the flip side. If you've used Edpuzzle, this feature is very similar to that atmosphere in Edpuzzle where you have that video and students have to answer questions as they go through. One of the nice things is, even on a student-paced Nearpod, you can set it so that students have to answer the questions before they keep going, so you can get some fairly reliable data there and not have them skip questions and have gaps in what comes in. We'll go ahead and run to the next one here. And this one is our first example of what Nearpod calls a drawlet. And these are very flexible things that you can provide a background, as you'll see here, as you should see on your screen right now. You should see a table that allows you to draw a picture of either flexible thinking or rigid thinking. So this is really just asking for you to picture what that might look like in your mind and then draw it on that drawlet. You can see as drawings start to come in, the teachers automatically updates, and it will actually color code itself. So you'll see these ones, people haven't started those, but on this one, somebody has it in progress, so it is yellow, and that will actually should change to a green once that student clicks on submit to give that to the teacher. As the teacher, I could click on any one of these to go ahead and jump in and see what that student has done at that point in time. And forgive me very much if I click past it and I don't give you quite enough time to do your drawing, but I will pause here for at least a few seconds and let you play with some of those tools, because you will have the ability to, as a student, draw. You can also insert images, and you have a highlighter feature. You obviously have text as well. So depending on your device, a lot of our students, because we don't have many touchscreens, will use the text versus trying to draw it in. Or if it fits, they'll also bring in an image to kind of make it a little easier on that side as well. But you can see as we get a few more popping in, we get that progress of seeing the yellow in progress. And then as students submit, you get that green bar to know that they are done. And it's very nice to see these on the fly. Think about different things you might be able to put into these backgrounds. Obviously, it could be like a PDF of a worksheet that students fill in. You could give them a blank canvas to just go from scratch with a prompt. You could put maps in the background that they fill out. You could put graphic organizers in the background. Anything that you can get an image of, or maybe even a PDF, you can get into that background and have your students elaborate on it. And kind of the next level, you could have them working on something, take a screenshot of it, and then bring that into a Drawlet to kind of annotate and take it to the next level from there. We'll go ahead and keep rolling on through. Hopefully, I didn't rush too many people or cut too many people off that were working on answering that question. This should now take you to a quiz on your screen. I'll go ahead and pause here for a few seconds so you can kind of experience what that is like. In this case, it is a multiple choice quiz. So you'll see I do have the correct and incorrect as well as the no answer. So that tells me that as these come in, I'm going to start to get a decent report on this side of how many people have gotten these questions right, how many people have gotten these questions wrong. And you can see here, I start to have some data as they come in and a decent idea here as they answer them, even before the students submit the answer. I can start to get an idea of where they're at. Are they 1 for 3, 0 for 3? How are they doing as they progress through? We'll go ahead and move on to the next one here in just a moment. But it is nice that as you go through on the teacher side, obviously the screens are going to be a little different, but you should always know what type of question your students are seeing or what they're working on by what you see. And then remember also in that top right, you can always switch to student view if you need to explain something or make sure it is the quiz or the question you think is up in front of them at that time. One of the great things about Nearpod is its ability to kind of personalize things. You can fairly easily duplicate Nearpods, change a few pieces of content, or embed something like a Google slide or a hyperdot and have even multiple on a page. You can put multiple Nearpod links on the same page to really allow for multiple levels of students in the same class diverging into different paths. And you can use multiple types of formative assessment to be able to really identify those different learning um, goals, or not goals, but necessarily how they're doing as far as meeting those targets, and also see if they're understanding things, if there's any misconceptions that they have. And another activity for you to experience here is a fill in the blank. So as we've kind of talked in Nearpod, I've touched on a lot of these different things. So you on the student side should be able to drag and drop where you think these words go, and then make sure you hit done. But as far as creating one of these, we'll possibly have enough time to play with that on the flip side here. But essentially, as a teacher, you would have this paragraph or you would type it in. You could copy and paste it if you have it already. And then all you do is click the words that you want to take out and put into the lesson bank. So very easily, if I had this already typed, I could have copied this, pasted it in, clicked on those few words, and probably created this activity in less than a minute or so. Even if I had to type it, I might be 5 minutes or less to have this activity ready to go. That's definitely more engaging than just reading it to the students and having them understand it there. This gives me a good idea. Did they get what I just said? Are they understanding the topic well enough to go ahead and drag and drop the answers into the correct place? And in our current climate, it is really nice to know that Nearpod works really well in the physical classroom. It can be run very easily there as a student pace, as part of centers. It can work really well as a live teacher-based lesson. It works really well and actually has a Zoom integration for teaching in the remote classroom or in the hybrid. And depending on your setup and what is able to happen for you, that again could be live or student paced as well. In the flipped classroom model, which a lot of our teachers have started to employ off and on this year during COVID, it's really nice to be able to have students answer those questions and have that good data on the flip side to know where they are and where the teachers can kind of pinpoint their face-to-face instruction, whether that's in person or virtually, to try and help kind of tag into those gaps and get those students what they need. Now, if you haven't before, this next part is going to have you actually get into Nearpod. You can create a free account on the fly if you've never been there before. You can log in with Google. You should be able to log in with Microsoft as well, so whichever your school might use. You can also create an account with just an email as well and get into the free silver plan, because again, there are multiple levels to Nearpod. So do know it is what I would term a freemium tool, where you can get a certain level for free and get access to a lot of the different tools and different things. But some of the things that I may have mentioned or you may have seen during this are going to be some of those paid features. So do know, full disclosure, it is free to a point, but there are some things you might need the paid version for. But once on nearpod.com, your login button is going to be towards the top right. And you'll see here on this right-hand side, you can easily log in with Google or Microsoft or use an email and a password. Here is an example twofold. Number one, this is going to show you what it looks like to log in, but at the same time, this also gives you an idea of what it looks like to embed a slideshow right within Nearpod. So you can see this tells you go to nearpod.com, which should be clickable for you. Then you're going to go to login, and this is exactly what that login screen looks like. But you can see it's a very nice, clean interface that if you have some lessons in Google Slides already, you could download those as images, get them into Nearpod if you have that free account versus that gold level that would let you get in and have the ability to actually use that Nearpod add-on. Again, in Google Slides, you need to have the gold account for that. Once you are logged in, your homepage should look like this, where you have the library starting on the top left, and then you would have your actual different Nearpod lessons here in the center. And if you're brand new to Nearpod, you may well not have any there right now, but you should see a very similar interface as far as having the create button and the option to create folders in that center part. Some of the different options you'll see towards the top right as you're logged in, you're going to have the create button, which is going to allow you to create lessons or jump straight into an interactive video. Again, if you have that gold account, you can jump in and create with Google Slides. You also have the ability, which is really nice with our teachers, to do a quick launch activity. So maybe you weren't planning to use Nearpod that day, but you really want to get a quick kind of engagement check. You can use that quick launch to on the fly launch out a collaborate board or an open-ended question. Maybe you want to do a draw it, or possibly you just need a timer to time down and maybe sound a little bit of a sound when a center is over. You can also access your profile from there. In the lesson settings is a spot that you definitely want to check out in Nearpod. Even if you're a veteran user, if you've never gone into lesson settings, that is definitely something that you want to check out, because within lesson settings, that's where you can turn on the need for students to sign in with Google for a lesson instead of just being able to type whatever. That's where you can turn on things like Immersive Reader and different things like that. They're all going to be within that lesson setting. So if you've never checked that out, I would definitely recommend that you tuck that in and click on the lesson settings to check that out. And again, another embed here of a slideshow. So you can see as you come in, this is going to show you what all those menus look like. If you haven't gotten into Nearpod, if you're not kind of playing along as this presentation happens, this is what your create looks like, again, with that lessons, the video, another breakdown of what the create and quick launch look like. This also gives us a really nice view of what our options are going to be down that left-hand side. So if I needed to join a Nearpod and I missed it on the home screen, I could type it in there to be a student. I'm going to be able to jump to my library as well as my reports. I could create and send out subplans. And I would also have access here to the school library as well as my district library. So a nice collaboration feature built in. You can share any Nearpod, but teachers, if it's turned on the administrator side, can also share to a school library as well as a district library to be able to easily collaborate with their peers. And then this page or slide, I should say, gives you a lot of idea of some of the extra bonus content that you can purchase in Nearpod, such as things for English language learners, digital citizenship, social emotional learning, as well as some vocabulary add-ons. For some reason, it's skipping down a few extra, but that's fine. You can also search for lessons. So within Nearpod, as you log in, you should see that search part on that left-hand side. You can go ahead and search by standards. You can do a keyword search, and you can see here all of the different places that content pulls from, including what was teaching tolerance, which is now learning for justice. But PhET simulations, I saw somebody had pointed out on our Collaborate board. You also have Flipgrid. You can embed things like thing links, 360-degree cities. So a ton of different content can be brought into one place. And a ton of it, as you can see in 8,500 plus lessons, is already built into that Nearpod lesson library, which you can see here. Again, is going to appear on that left-hand side. You can search by lessons or by videos. And depending on if you're in the States, you can also jump in and search by standard as well. And to give you an idea of what that could look like here, you can see each one of these should be clickable for you to where you can go ahead and search lessons and videos in the Nearpod library, again, searching by standards, or of course, jumping into that video library. And we'll keep rolling through because again, I will do my best to get you a student paced link for this so you'll have access to all of this content. As you are finding something within the library, you may then want to actually use it. So you would click the option to add it to your library versus just the Nearpod lesson library. And once it's there, you can then look for your edit option and jump in and actually edit every part of that lesson. Maybe that lesson is 40 slides and you want to go ahead and cut it down to 20 and you want to change the content. All you have to do is click that edit button and you can jump in and change every single part of that Nearpod. You can see here it's a very simple editing interface. All I would have to do to edit that slide is double click it and I would be in customizing, changing every part of that I would like. Some of the different activity types that you can put in. We played with a Collaborate board before. We played with fill in the blank. There is also a game type interface in Time to Climb, which we will play here towards the end in about 10 minutes. You can also have matching pairs. We played with an open-ended question. Some of you also used the audio response. We definitely did draw it. We had a quiz and a poll question. We have not done it yet, but there are memory test option as well. And you can directly embed Flipgrid. And those are just the things that are built into Nearpod. You can also add in pretty much anything you can get a link to. You can embed right within Nearpod and again, make it nearly a one-stop shop for your students. And we touched on the interactive video, so I'll go through this one pretty quickly, but I did want to make sure that I touched on again that you can bring in your own videos. You can pull videos from the video library. And if you were creating a Nearpod on the fly, this shows you the screen where you would go to the content tab. And these are going to be things that are maybe a little bit less interactive, but obviously could still be very good, and especially on that content side. So that's where you'll see video, things like PhET simulations, embedding slideshows, doing different vocabulary, because with a Nearpod account and not a purchase of vocabulary, you can embed 3 vocabulary videos in total. So meaning you could put 3 in one lesson, or you could have 1 in 3 different lessons, but you would get 3 total to be able to use. And again, you have the library, you can use YouTube, you can also search videos by your standards or subject areas, and then go ahead and pick the exact spots in the video where you want to hit that blue activity button to add an activity, and those can be open-ended or multiple choice. And this shows you that any YouTube video you see out there, a quick way to get the link for it is to right-click that YouTube video and look for the copy video URL button. And then you can easily bring it in by pasting that link in. And of course, as I said, you can go ahead and upload your own video as well and add those formative assessment pieces to it. If you want to share a lesson from in your library, you would just look for the three dots at the top right, click on that, and then hit this share with teachers. And you'll notice that you can share it as view only, or you can share it as an editable Nearpod. It does either way still make them their own copy, so it is independent of your version. So you don't have to worry about somebody else kind of messing with that, moving it, or doing something that would make it so you weren't ready to teach with it the next day. But it is a very nice and easy way to share it with a team member so they don't have to start from scratch. If you're like me, and I know probably a few more of us on the call are here, that you like to keep things nicely organized, you can add folders and drag and drop lessons into those, and you can even color code those folders for an added layer of organization. To launch a Nearpod, we've touched on this, but you haven't quite seen it yet, so that'll be coming up here in just a moment. Your two main options are a live lesson, which is what you're experiencing now if you're in with me, where I'm kind of explaining things. I'm clicking it. It's very much a a teacher-led lesson. You also have the option to do a student paste, which is going to, again, allow them to click through without the teacher leading it, and they can do it at any point in time. They will need an internet connection. It's not an offline activity, but as long as they have that connection, they could do that at any time. And again, lending itself nicely to station-based learning as well as kind of the flipped classroom type of scenario. And this is just a real quick rundown, giving you a little bit bigger graphics and showing you the option here where you can actually do a live participation plus Zoom. So if you are a district using Zoom, we use Google Meet, so I can't use that feature, but there is a nice integration there with Zoom to where you can go into your library again, hover over the lesson you want to use, and choose whether or not that's going to be live participation or student. And then one of the nice things, and something I didn't touch on at the very beginning, is that with a student-paced lesson, you can actually click on the calendar and you can change how long that code is good for, how long those students can get to that. It defaults to a month, but you can make it all the way out to a year of access. So depending on when they need access to it and how long they need, you can go ahead and make that everywhere up to 365 days. And notice here the toggle switch rate above that, that requires students to give responses and prevent skipping as they go through. So if you want to make sure they answer those questions, make sure you toggle that on as you're doing your creation side. And then, of course, as we touched on at the very beginning, you can email out, you can share it on social, you can get the link, or you can grab it and put it straight into an LMS like Google Classroom, or some are using Microsoft Teams in a very similar fashion. You can also post it out there. And we won't go through all of those. We'll go ahead and jump to the next one, which again, we touched on. Student paced, again, is the way for students to work independently versus that live participation where the teacher is really leading everything and walking the students through. We'll go ahead and skip that one because, again, it touches on that student paced again. And we'll go ahead and keep rolling through some of these others that are very similar as well. This slide is very nice to kind of pause on. If you're on it, you should be able to scroll down. But this slide gives you an idea of what it looks like for different activities, whether you are the teacher or the student. So you can see here what a time to climb looks like on the teacher side, as opposed to what it looks like for the student. What about an open-ended question? How does that differ? Matching pairs, a quiz option, what a flip grid would look like. Again, teacher side, student side. What a drawlet looks like from both sides. what the collaborate board looks like. Remember, we had the option of moderating or not when we did the collaborate board. The poll question, what the fill in the blank looks like, again, from both sides. And it's just a really nice quick run through. And if you save this video, you can pause that on each one, and you could even grab probably a screen grab from that. So you have that as a reference to know what it's going to look like on both sides. So we'll pause here to do another quick check-in question. Which option do you see being the most valuable? And you can choose more than one. What are you thinking as far as student paced, teacher paced, as well as that live lesson with video option? So we see a few coming in. Okay. We like the flexibility. I would agree. And again, you see, it's very nice to have these different check-ins and the poll type question where people can choose multiple, and you can get a really good pulse of your audience as you go through. And I would agree, depending on what you need and what your lesson is going to look like, and especially now during the times of COVID-19 schooling, it really has to be the teacher making the call on what that particular lesson calls for. Does it lend itself better to a student paced, or does it really lend itself nicely to being a teacher led? I know the majority of my students can get in and do a live lesson. And on the flip side, as we talked about a little earlier, you might want to have a duplicate of that you embed into your LMS as a student paced for all of those students that might need that as reference later, or just to have something to connect to when they can. One of the last things we're going to touch on is reports. So it's really great to have all of these engagement components and have this just wealth of options that you get within Nearpod. But on the flip side, we all know that the data is really important to help drive our instruction and make sure that we're getting the students exactly what they need. And really kind of being able to personalize that to the point of being able to make sure that equity is a key focus in our room, and we're giving each student the different scaffolds and support that they need. But as I'm logged into Nearpod, you're going to see on the left-hand side that I have reports there. I can also go to reports straight from the lesson library by clicking the three dots and then choosing reports. And the reports, as I said, they're really important and useful for not only planning instruction, but personalizing that learning. And then also using those individual student reports to share learning outcomes and create goals, maybe with students in a collaborative kind of conference planning session, but also, of course, being able to share that with parents and admins as well. So again, down that left-hand side is where you're going to be able to get to reports. Once you're there, you can find the lesson that you taught, for instance, this work and energy lesson. And then I can see underneath each time I've led that lesson and how many students were in it. And then I can actually start to drill down in and click down and see the wealth of data that's there for each one of those lessons. How did kind of the whole class do? I can look at each student and see not only how they did overall, but if they did a drawlet or a matching pairs or any kind of those activities, I can look at each one and see what that exact student submitted for that piece of work or the evidence of their learning. I can get them as a download of a PDF. I could also get a CSV to be able to easily work with. So there's a very nice wealth of data you get. Again, for each one of those lessons you run, you're going to have that ability to get that really good and meaningful data on the flip side. So as we get towards the wrapping up point, to do some quick reflection, we want to think about here, what's one thing that you might have learned today? And I know we have some people that have used Nearpod before, but if you are new as this kind of was that introduction, or even if you are a veteran, are there any things that you picked up today? What do you think some of your next steps might be for implementing Nearpod in your classroom? And on the flip side, is there anything that you think you could need some more help with? I know we answered some of the questions we had, but I know we definitely didn't answer them all. So I'll pause here for a few seconds and give you guys some time to maybe add a couple things to this collaborate board. But again, think about, was there something you might have learned today, something new that you picked up? What do you think your next steps are? Have you used Nearpod before? I saw somebody in the chat was talking about possibly needing or wanting a gold license to get a few more options. I will say that if you shoot me a line on Twitter, maybe send me an email, I may well be able to hook you up with a trial of a gold code. So definitely let me know if you would need that in any way. Yeah, those lesson settings are very helpful. I know our teachers usually didn't have a lot of issues, but even that ability to toggle it on so that students need to log in with Google or with their Microsoft account has really helped so that we can easily trace back exactly who the students are, especially on that nice data side within those reports. So hopefully you'll be able to take some time after this to explore, edit some lessons, maybe share with a colleague, and then also apply it and actually put it into your classroom. See how it works. Let me know. I'd love to collaborate and help you create some Nearpods. I would love to hear how it's worked after you've put it into your classroom. As you think about it, as you run some Nearpods, you may want to consider becoming a Nearpod certified educator. After you've learned about it, maybe through this or another session with Nearpod, you can easily have that learn part done. Once you create a lesson, you'll have that second check mark done. And then you just need to teach it to at least 15 students and go over to the nearpod.com/certified-educator, fill out the form, and before too long, you will be a Nearpod certified educator. You'll get a certificate as well as a nice shiny badge, as well as access to the Nearpod Certified Educators Facebook group that has a few thousand super passionate educators all doing a really great job of using Nearpod, coming up with great new and exciting ideas to help you learn and use it more. There's a bunch of different options for professional growth and development. You can see there is a distance learning expert badge for both Nearpod and Flocabulary. There's a few different perks that you would get after becoming a Nearpod certified educator, including 6 months of gold access. So not only would you get that badge, but I noticed we had a couple people that asked about that gold. I may be able to hook you up with that, but you would also be able to get it if you did that Nearpod certified educator program as well. As I said, and I know Rachel will be awesome to tuck this into the chat for us, there is an awesome Nearpod resource page as well that is going to give you a wealth of information from different webinars that you can tune into and check out, as well as how-to videos, including this really nice 4-pack of getting started in a quick way from creating lessons to finding lessons, launching them, checking out reports, all right there in a nice bundle. And then you can explore both teacher and admin resources and a whole lot more as you come down the page. Nearpod is definitely really good at putting out good resources, up-to-date resources, and then having a ton of different people, like a lot of our ed tech tools do. But Nearpod really does have a great kind of professional learning community that is there to help you out almost every step of the way. And as we get towards the very end here, we should have one last fun activity to do. As my computer hopefully loads up for us here, you should on your screen have the option very soon to jump into a time to climb. So I'm going to pause here and see if we get a few players in, and then we will be just about out of time. But I'll go ahead and pause here. I know we have a few people in the Nearpod, but we may be getting to the point where it's a little late for folks to jump in. But in case you do want to jump in, feel free to take a moment there and jump in. You can see I still have those students' names hidden, but I could uncheck that and show names. But time to climb is essentially one of the ways that you could use Nearpod in a gamified fashion. You can make the questions in advance. They can have pictures or they can have text. And if anybody is waiting to jump in, that code is still in the top left-hand side. But I'll go ahead and start this so that we make sure we have enough time for people to play. So as I go ahead and start it, you'll see that we get a countdown. I timed this one so that people had 10 seconds to answer. Said the first computer was invented over 2,500 years ago. It was called an abacus. What was it used for? Second question is, in what decade were these technologies invented? The disposable camera, the CD-ROM, the Game Boy, the first artificial heart. And I could be wrong, but I believe that answer was the 80s. And question 3 upcoming. Who is often called the father of the modern day computer? Somebody is definitely getting a lot of these ones right. And one of the nice things is too, as students answer the questions, you'll notice that nobody goes backwards. If they get it wrong, they just don't climb as fast. If they get it right and they get it right really fast, they climb a little faster than others that maybe didn't get it right as fast. But it is nice that everybody kind of makes progress. And if you can believe in that question, how long ago the actual first iPhone was, it is usually a lot longer than our kids think it was. How big were the first computers? Oh, Pilly, I'm so sorry that it wouldn't let you in. We'll definitely fire up another one at some point so you can have the joy of getting into the time to climb. And the last question, I should say. And this number blew my mind. It is in the really a bigger number than I think I actually know how to write. But the calculations per second that the fastest computer can do is mind-boggling at this point. And you can see you get a nice overall leaderboard at the end. And on the flip side, as you do with some other tools, Nearpod, you get a nice data report as well that's going to show you what the students answered. So it's a nice, fun experience for them, but it's also one that gets you some of that good, meaningful data on the flip side so that you can help that continue to drive instruction. I thank you guys for joining. I hope you picked up some great Nearpod tips. I hope that if you were new to Nearpod, you got everything you need to jump in and get started. And as always, I am here at PHASEDU on Twitter, as well as phasedu@gmail.com. If you want to send me a line at any point in time, please feel free. I would love to collaborate and help you along on your Nearpod journey. And I'll do a quick scan here over on my second monitor. I didn't see many questions coming in, so I think we are good there. But again, if you have questions as far as getting greater access, send me a line. I'd be happy to try and hook you up with gold access. If you are ready to jump in and get using it, remember that with that Nearpod certified educator program, you can also jump into gold level access there as well. Thank you guys for your time. As always, reach out anytime. And thank you, Rachel, behind the scenes, for running the show in StreamYard. Until I see you guys again, thank you for everything that you do. Have a great night.